Hey there YouTubers, it's Don from True Cable coming back at you again, this time to talk about how far can you run an Ethernet cable. Well, first we need to talk about Ethernet for a moment. Ethernet is a protocol. So when we say Ethernet cable, we're going to talk about purpose-built cable like copper category cable like Cat6, Cat5e, Cat8, copper twisted pair cable. So that's what we're going to be referring to for this video. And it's extremely important to note that Ethernet cable is quite complex in regards to calculating the proper maximum length you can go with it. I know there's a common 328-foot number that's thrown around a lot. That number is important, but it could be a lot less important than some other numbers that we're going to talk about. And why is this stuff important? Well, it's network reliability, and not just reliability, but reliability under various edge case conditions like temperature rise and things like that. So buckle up, because we're going to be talking about lengths from various different aspects and talk about the myriads of factors that can affect your maximum lengths and possibly your network reliability. All right, so in order to discuss the maximum length that you can run Ethernet cable, it's going to be important to discuss two primary types of Ethernet. The first is going to be your solid copper permanent link cable. This is the solid copper in-wall cable. And then there's also patch cable. And the maximum lengths that apply to these different types of cables are going to be quite a bit different. And what you use where is also going to be quite a bit different. And this all has an effect on the numbers. So also, it's important to note that category has no bearing on that hard 328-foot limit. In fact, category, if you're going to use, like, for example, Cat8 at 40 gigabit, it's actually going to be significantly less than that 328-foot hard limit that you've heard about in the past. But let's talk about that 328-foot number to start with. I mean, where did that come from? And why is it 328? And how do you, what goes into that? So the 328-foot number is based upon a multi-part communications channel. A channel is essentially the entire end-to-end communications channel from one powered device to another powered device. So that would be like a switch, and then eventually out to a PC or a server or a printer or something like that. Or a Wi-Fi access point is another example. So you're going to have a patch cord on one end going from your switch to your patch panel. And that's typically a stranded copper patch cord. Patch cord being it's already got pre-installed AP8C or RJ45 connectors. And then in the middle, from your patch panel to the remote outlet where your PC is or whatever, you're going to have solid copper in-wall cable, otherwise known as a permanent link structure cabling. And then at the remote outlet, you literally have an outlet, a Keystone Jack outlet, where you would then plug in yet another stranded copper patch cord. And patch cords are referred to as patch cables and also equipment cords. They all mean the same thing. So patch cable, patch cord, equipment cord. For the purposes of this discussion, it's the same. So that kind of dictates how the entire channel is put together. So there are different rules that apply to how long certain things can be. Patch cord gauge, that being because patch cords are typically thinner and they're stranded copper. So they cannot go as far. So the 295-foot limit is placed, a 295-foot limit is placed on permanent links of solid copper Ethernet. So that would be 22 gauge to 24 gauge solid copper. That maximum length is 295 feet, and that can be affected by ambient temperatures. So that's at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. As you go above 68 degrees Fahrenheit, your permitted lengths get shorter. Now you can mitigate that to an extent, but only fractionally speaking, with shielded Ethernet cable. For example, this cable has a shield on it. And this is, for example, unshielded Ethernet cable. Now it's true that shielded may get you more footage based on temperature, not more footage just for the sake of more footage, but it may help mitigate temperature rise. So that's a situation where shielded is actually a benefit. So the rack to jack, the patch panel to your remote keystone, is going to be 295 feet. And that can be affected again by temperature. And that's one of the biggest considerations there. As long as it's 22 to 24 AWG, and you're not looking to go at higher bandwidths, or you don't need to shorten your link further for intermediate speeds, for example, 10 gigabit over Cat6, 295 feet is the number. Getting to the patch cord side of the equation, now we're talking about connectorized cords that are already ready-made. You can go on both ends of your channel, or maybe just on one end of your channel. That's another kind of link we'll talk about in another video. But this, for example, is a 28 gauge patch cord. So the gauge of the patch cord is going to have a severe impact on the length of the amount, or permitted amount of patch cord. Now, going back to the 328 foot number again, that's under perfectly ideal circumstances with the following conditions. So it's a 295 foot permanent link at 68 degrees Fahrenheit or less. It's also two combined patch, the combined patch cord total of two patch cords using 24 gauge stranded copper. So as you can see, there's a lot of like asterisks and caveats that are hung on that particular 328 foot number. Now, we could go further down the rabbit hole and say, if you're using Cat6, and you want to go 10 gigabit, now you're even going shorter. Or if you're going to be going Cat8 and you want to push 40 gigabit, now you're at 100 feet maximum. But we're not going to go there for this video. We're just going to suffice it to say that your overall channel length can be drastically affected, really drastically affected, by patch cord gauge and also by temperature. And that's what we really want to get into. We're going to talk through a chart here, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put one up on the screen. We're going to walk through it. And I'm going to reference something here on the table so we can talk about a certain chart that's going to kind of let you know at a certain speed what, at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, what your maximum distance is going to be. So for category 5E, it's either 1 gigabit or 2.5 gigabits. You have 328 feet. Again, that's with a full length permanent link, 24 gauge, or well, 22 to 24 gauge, typically 24, and two 24 gauge stranded copper patch cords, 16 and a half feet, 33 feet total, or however you want to divide it up. For Cat6, you can now take that same at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 33 feet of patch cord, 24 gauge stranded copper, to 328 feet for 5 gigabit. So it's doubling the bandwidth you can get at the same distance. And then if you want to go to 10 gigabit on category 6, now all of a sudden you're at 165 feet. That's your maximum distance. And in fact, if it's a bundle of cable and you may have some crosstalk going on, you're limited to now about 120 feet, but that's not on the chart. Category 6A is another one that's 328 feet. And that will get you 10 gigabits all the way up to 328 feet. Again, solid copper permanent link, 295 feet, and two 24 gauge patch cords. And we're talking about unshielded stuff here. None of this stuff is shielded, so that's not a factor playing a role here. Category 7, which is not a TIA standard, is not used in North America, but it is in fact a ISO IEC 11801 standard, so we'll talk about it a little bit. That again is limited to 328 feet, but it's capable of being pushed to 40 gigabit to 165 feet. So it improves upon the category 6A a little bit. And the final category we'll talk about is Cat 8. Now, if you want to use it at 1 gigabit, 2.5, 5 gigabit, or 10 gigabit, all the way out to 328 feet, again, the same circumstances, same conditions. but you're not going to go past 10 gigabit with it. If you want to actually run it for the intended bandwidth of 40 gigabit, or 25 or 40 gigabit, you're now limited to 100 feet. So your bandwidth does play a role here. But you can see though, there's a common denominator here. If you're at the full maximum channel length of 328 feet, given the right set of conditions, the right temperature, right patch cord, copper gauge, and things like that, then 328, that's where that hard limit comes from. But things can get shorter. You may have your ambient temperature in your installation may be 105 degrees for whatever reason. Well, now all of a sudden you may be going down shorter. So temperature plays a big role, and it incrementally brings down your cable lengths that you can use. Again, shielded does mitigate that to an extent. So if you want to reference this chart, which kind of gives you some idea of maximum lengths based on temperature rise, you can see that as soon as you get above 68 degrees, and then you start going, and it's going higher in temperature, your lengths are getting shorter. So that'll give you another factor to take into account. So you're starting at 328, you're just going to go shorter. Now let's say you don't want to use 28 gauge patch cords. Let's say you don't want to use 24 gauge patch cords. Remember, all these maximum numbers I've been giving you are predicated on a 24 gauge stranded copper patch cord. Well, let's say you want to use 28 gauge. Okay, well, now all of a sudden things get drastically different, because if you have a full length 295 foot permanent link, regardless of category, and you want to use the maximum amount of 28 gauge patch cord, now all of a sudden you're limited to a maximum total of 20 feet. That's right, so 10 feet each side, because when you reduce the copper gauge on stranded copper, as you reduce that gauge, the lengths don't go down incrementally. They don't go down on a steady pace. They go down at an exponential rate. So a good happy medium, if you're looking to go really long with patch cords, is probably 26 gauge. If you're looking for maximum patch cord lengths, 24 gauge. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with 26 and 24 gauge, you're dealing with thicker patch cords. That makes wiring up patch panels difficult, routing through cable furniture and things like that. So that's why the 28 gauge patch cords are so useful. They can turn around things and they have a very small bend radius. But you are dealing with shortened lengths. Let's get some common scenarios here. So let's assume we're going to be able to achieve our 328 feet with 24 gauge patch cord. Well, let's take it down to 26 gauge. Let's look at the next chart here. So the next chart shows you that if you take it down a notch on your patch cord gauge to 26 gauge, okay, so it's a little thinner, maybe a little easier to work with, you're now limited to 321 feet under ideal circumstances. And if you go to 28 gauge, okay, which is the thinnest you can go per the standard, 315 feet is now your maximum length, not 328 anymore. So much for 328, right? And probably nobody ever told you that yet. Well, you're learning it now. All right, so when you start combining all this stuff together, you can combine it together in various ways to come up with how long your permanent link can be versus how long your patch cords can be, vice versa. And there's a chart for that, of course. In fact, there's another one on the screen. Take a quick look at this. So let's say, for example, that your permanent link length is 262 feet. Okay, so you're probably saying in your mind, oh wow, I can go way more now with my 28 gauge patch cord, right? Wrong. That patch cord copper gauge, because it's stranded copper, going down just that one step is going to have a much more drastic impact than you may think. So looking at that 246 length for permanent link number, for example, skip over to the 24 gauge and you could have a total of 72 feet combined, both sides, of stranded copper patch cord that's 24 gauge. But if you look all the way over to the 28 gauge, it's 46 feet. So And if you look over at the 28 gauge column, you'll notice that at a certain point it hits 49 and it doesn't get any longer for you. And the reason why is because the maximum amount of 28 gauge patch cord that you can have in any channel, even if the entire channel is literally just the patch cord and you're not using a permanent link, is 50 feet, 49 feet essentially. So as these things get mixed up, switched around, and you're switching patch cord gauges and your temperatures are rising or going down, all of this stuff can affect your actual overall channel length. So that 328 foot number is really only applicable in certain situations and a best case scenario. But people toss it out there all the time like it's some sort of hard and fast rule. But it is a hard and fast rule, but only in certain cases. What are the implications of exceeding these lengths? Let's say, well, I want to try to stretch things a little further with something, or my temperatures are high and I want to go farther than I should for the temperature. What's going to potentially happen? Well, you could get drop packets. Your network may be reliable in the morning, but not the afternoon because of temperature rise, for example. And you could end up with a non-working cable channel. Our equipment could get undervolted if it's PoE. So it's not wise to exceed these numbers because these numbers have a built-in safety feature and safety factor, which means that your system will work under all foreseeable, reasonable conditions as long as you obey these rules. Okay, well, thank you very much for sticking with us through this video thus far. You've seen a few charts to explain maximum lengths under certain conditions. You know that copper gauge is a factor when it comes to patch cords, especially patch cord. You know that bandwidth can play a factor and temperature can play a factor. So what are some tips to help optimize it and get the best lengths you can get? Okay, so you know you're working with that 328 foot hard limit. Well, I mean, keep it in the back of your mind, but what you really want to pay attention to is temperature and patch cord gauge. So first of all, if you have an outdoor run, you're definitely going to be subject to temperature reduction. Unless you happen to be in an environment that's 68 degrees Fahrenheit or less year-round, you're definitely going to be dealing with temperature reduction based on length. So keep an eye on that. And take the worst case scenario temperature that you've had in your area for the last 10 years and look it up online and use that as the number to base your maximum length on. And we do have a blog called Ethernet's Effects on Ethernet Cable Length in our Cable Academy, which dictates or will actually guide you through exactly how long the cable can be. You can use shielded cable to mitigate the effect, but only fractionally. It's not going to get you 50 more feet or something like that. It's going to get you a few more feet. So shielded cable is able to help a little, but not much in this situation. But it does help mitigate it to some extent. The next thing is make sure that you're installing your cable well. Obey the bend radius restrictions for the cable. If you don't have any bend radii stated for the cable that you're using, then the generic guidance overrides. So that would be for unshielded cable, you would be 4 times the outside diameter is the minimum bend, or I should say maximum bend, depending how you look at it. And for shielded cable, it's 8 times the outside diameter. So take the millimeters, multiply it times either 4 or 8, and then that gives you the actual arc of the radius. Now, double it again, it gives you a circle, which might be a little bit easier to visualize when you're putting in cabling so that you understand what you're dealing with. Given those tips and tricks, hopefully you'll be able to work out what your actual permitted length is going to be. It probably wasn't when you came into this video, you probably thought I'd just say, oh, well, 328, have a nice day. As a matter of fact, it's actually quite a bit more complex than that. And as you can see, there's a lot of factors that do play into it. So if you would please subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down as you see fit. Leave a comment below. Have you run into any particular situation where you went too long and you had problems? I'd love to hear what happened to you. Any other edge case scenarios you've had happen to you? Let us know. So with that, I'm going to say you have a great day and happy networking.
thank you very much for watching the video. You may not be aware of it, but we also have extensive blogs at our Cable Academy, 200 plus and counting. And most of the videos that you actually see here on YouTube are in fact embedded in a blog, which is far more detailed in regards to photography and descriptions. So I strongly recommend you head over to our Cable Academy, truecable.com, and check it out.